Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Big Questions, Small Steps. My name is Amanda and I'm so glad that you could join me today. So today's episode I should say, is coming as at a response or an inquisitive statement that some of my family members have made. If you're new to this channel, let me give you a quick heads up. So I was raised in the Christian culture for 40 years, and after that time, during that time, I had questions and struggles, and essentially after 40 years, it caused me to leave the Christian faith. And now I am currently on the path of conversion to Judaism. So in that time, there's been lots of different things that have changed and lots of different things that I've learned. And my family's trying to essentially play catch up, and they're trying to learn. So a question that I get asked frequently in my family is, well, why can't you do something on Saturday? Or we're having a family get together on Saturday, why can't you be there? Or things like that. And that's because in Judaism, they have a different Sabbath or Shabbat than in Christianity. So today's video is exploring the different Sabbaths or Shabbats or holy days of the week in Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, just because we want to be fair and make sure that we give a full range of pictures. So we're going to explore Sabbath or Shabbat in those three religions, what they kind of mean, what they might look like, and then we'll move on from there. Okay? So to start, all three, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, all acknowledge the days of creation story found in the book of Genesis. So if you're not familiar with that story, I'll run it down quickly. Basically, it says in there that God created the world in his own image, and he essentially did a checklist of things on different days. So on day 1, he created light. He separated light from the dark. On day 2, he separated the sky from below. On day 3, he separated the land and the water. On day 4, he made the sun, the moon, and the stars in the outer space. On day 5, he made all the animals in the sea as well as the air. So any animal in the water as well as in the air. On day 6, he created all the land animals, including the humans. And then on the 7th day, he rested. He looked at all that he had done, and he knew it was good, and he rested. Okay, so that's the days of creation story. That you need to know and understand to see how the different religions, different practices relate or interpret that. Okay, so let's start with Islam and how they observe a Sabbath, or what their Sabbath kind of looks like. So their Sabbath is on Friday, which in the days of creation would be like day 6, because everyone just believes that the Sunday is the first day. That's just, the Sunday is the first day of the week in everybody's opinion. So the Islam faith has Friday as their holy day, but they don't take it as a day of rest. And they don't do that because they say Allah never needed to rest. So Allah is their version of God. They say Allah never needs to rest as he is above all human-like attributes. So they interpret rest to mean pause, but they don't view it as it needs to be a pause for a full day. So what the people of the Islamic faith or the Muslim people do is on Fridays, they will have a prayer service. So they pause whatever they are doing. If they're a doctor, they stop at the office for a little while. They go to prayer services, and then as soon as prayer services are done, then they are commanded to resume their work. So if they were at the hospital before, then they go back to the hospital. If they were at the home before, they go back to the home. They carry on with their normal day-to-day activities, And it's more about taking that purposeful pause to praise Allah for his creation, and then bringing your gratitude for Allah into your everyday experiences. So that's their Sabbath or their Shabbat or whatever you want to call it. It's their holy day. It's Friday, and they pause to pray. And then they go back to whatever else they were doing. They don't have any other restrictions on that day. It's nothing special. They pause to pray. That's the most important thing. They have reasonings to back it up. They say that the seventh day is the best day because that's the day that the sixth day was the best day because that's the day Adam was created. That's the day that they entered paradise. That's the day that they were expelled from paradise. That was the most important day. So they're going to pause, but they don't need to give it a whole day. Okay? So that's the Islamic faith and what they do for their holy days, Shabbat, Sabbath, whatever you want to call it. For Islam, they call it their holy day. The Friday is their holy day. Okay? In Judaism, it's slightly different. So in Judaism, they go back in the creation story. God created light and dark. So there was dark everywhere, and then God pulled the light out of the dark. So what Judaism tends to do is whenever there is a recognition or a celebration or a special day, it will actually begin with the dark, because that's what God created first. So for Judaism, their Shabbat, which is their holy day, Shabbat starts at sunset on Friday when it gets dark. So they're acknowledging that's the day where God started to rest. And it will continue all the way through the next day into the next dark, which would be a full day. So it's technically 25 hours. So it goes from sunset on Friday to sunset on Saturday, and there's 3 stars. It has to be 3 stars on Saturday night before you can close out Shabbat. And when they have Shabbat, depending on their observance level, there's many different things that they can or can't do. They can read Torah. They can certainly rest. It's supposed to be a purposeful pause to reconnect with those that you love and Hashem, or their version of God, another name for their God. They can certainly go to services. They can relax with their loved ones. Depending on their observance level, they might not be able to turn on lights. They might not be able to cook. They might not be able to use money to purchase things. They might not be able to drive a car. It all depends on their unique observance levels. But that's their Shabbat. Typically it will start with a service that you would do at home, and you would end with a service that you would do at home. And in Judaism, there's a Friday night service. It's called Kabbalat Shabbat, where they welcome in the Shabbat bride. And there is also a service on Saturday morning where they do more Torah study and really look at the parashas and things like that. And then you'll have a kiddush typically afterwards, like a little luncheon where you talk with the other people in your synagogue and you form that relationship and community. And then you carry about your day. It might be that you have a big luncheon at someone's house. It might be that you go visit family members. It might be that you go and take a nap. That's part of my practice is I go to Shabbat services and then I come home and I take a Shabbat nap because that's just what I do. So that's how Judaism observes Shabbat. So next let's talk about the Christians and how they celebrate Sabbath or Shabbat, their holy day, okay? So the Christians by and large today celebrate on Sunday, but they didn't always. As a matter of fact, Christians believe and hold true to the fact that Jesus was a Jew And so they believe that they all started out as Jews. So they initially would have Saturday as their holy day to restrain from work and other things like that. And then on Sunday, they would then go to worship services and do things like that to further their faith and their connection with God. The exception to that is a group called the Seventh-day Adventists, and they stick to Saturday as their main day. They don't do anything on Sunday. They stick to Saturday because it was the seventh day of creation. Christians, like I said, besides that one group, had Saturday as their day of rest, where they refrained from doing a whole bunch of things, and then Sunday was their day for worship. However, as time went along, they found that was too restrictive. So in around 115 AD, leaders of the church and leaders of the state were in great disagreements. There was a great deal of persecution going on at that time, and they wanted to be seen as different than the Jewish people. So they made the decision to switch from having their day of rest on Saturday to their day of rest on Sunday with their worship, to just make that differentiation. And it was confirmed in 335 AD at the First Council of Nicaea. We're going to go into the First Council of Nicaea in a different video, because holy cow, was there a lot of things that happened there, and it changed Christianity forever, that council meeting. And so we're going to talk about that later. But essentially in 335 AD, the church had decided that, okay, yes, we are going to move our official day of worship, or our official recognition of the Sabbath, to Sunday. Now, Sunday is the first day of the week, the first day of creation would that be aligned to? And there's different thoughts as to why it was moved. I'm going to share with you two, and then we'll move on from there, okay? So, actually there's three. So the first is they moved it to Sunday to align with some pagan movements. On Sunday was the day that they worshiped the sun god. Also in the days of creation, that's when God separated light from dark, sun being the light. So that's one rationale for it. The second was because the day of the week that they were celebrating was Sunday, because it was the day after restrictions, to celebrate their newfound freedoms with Jesus. Okay, so day of restriction, day of rest would be Saturday. They decided to move it to Sunday because they wanted to focus on Jesus and how he essentially changed everything for them, made it better for them. It was more freeing, and it was more focused on Jesus then. Okay, and then the third idea or reasoning rationale behind why they moved it from Saturday to Sunday is to align with the birth and resurrection of Jesus. Jesus died. Easter is on a Sunday in Christianity. And while his birth, sometimes it moves throughout the calendar week. Pardon me, I have hiccups. It moves throughout the calendar week. Sunday is the day that he rose from the dead. And that is a huge part of Christianity. That's why they believe he is the Son of God. So they switched it to Sunday to align with that. Okay. Basically, what the Christian churches have decided at this point is it doesn't really matter what day of the week you rest. It doesn't. It doesn't matter how you rest. It doesn't matter where you rest. They say that it just matters to find a rest with Christ. So for some, that might look like going for a walk and enjoying the nature and beauty that God created. For some, that may mean going to a worship service, which is typically somewhere between 45 minutes and 2 hours long. And they would sing and they would pray and they would read from the Bible and have discussions perhaps. But then they go home and they do whatever they want. They might go to the grocery store. They might go out to breakfast. Lots of different ways that people participate in their worship experience or their holy day experience. And the Christian denominations also say there's not restrictions on what you should or shouldn't do on that day. They say that the rest is more of a metaphorical rest where you do something that you enjoy, whether that's for 5 minutes, for 5 hours. They don't have time limits on it. They don't have necessarily restrictions on what you should and shouldn't do. They just want you to have a little piece of rest. So for many people, they'll go to church in the morning and then they'll go to breakfast or lunch and then they'll go about the rest of their day. Maybe they'll go shopping, maybe to a movie, maybe to see a grandma or grandpa, or maybe just go wash the car. They're all different. But it's interesting when you look back at Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, how even though they're so very different, they have strands of similarity, and it's interesting to look at their different viewpoints. I hope you learned something today, and I hope you'll join me next time. Until then, bye-bye.